כמו בריק and מורטי.
רגע. וואי, we're live. אתה הפעלת את זה.
All right, we're live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Drew's Talk. I have here with me, and I'm with him. Some of you might know him. People who follow my channel might not know him yet, and you should definitely know this guy and go follow him on YouTube, Mr. Khalifa. Khalifa, funny name. He's actually his real name. He have no relation to some of the Khalifas that maybe you guys know, but he's a very big advocate.
No connection to Mia Khalifa whatsoever. But I would like to have a talk with her, though.
I'm sure you would. A big advocate for the Druze. He's a Druze himself, born and raised in Israel. He served in the IDF and the Special Forces, a Druzi Asli, like we say. And he's becoming very, very known right now in the Israeli Hebrew and Arabic arena. He does a lot of translations for videos and analytics. He studied the topic very deeply. And without further ado, maybe I'll just let you say a few words about yourself, Khalifa.
Hey, hello. Good evening, Hebrews and Shebrews. I would say that we planned a surprise for this evening, but unfortunately it didn't happen. But stay posted because we have some interesting things going on here, and we've been doing it lately. Today we had our Hebrew show, but we didn't discuss the Druze matters or what happened with Trump, his visit to Syria, and what's going on with the Druze within all this shenanigans. So we said, let's do it, and let's do it in English and have a discussion about what's really going on. Trump just left the Middle East, and there's a lot of things to talk about.
That's very true. Trump is visiting Middle East. He goes and he visits Qatar. That shocked, I think, many of us. And then, to shock us even more, he went and he met with El-Shara, which is Jawlani, which some of you might have known him as a terrorist from Al-Qaeda, the people who did 9/11 on America, and from ISIS. He literally had a bounty on his head for about $10 million for many years because he was wanted terrorist by definition by the United States. And now he somehow became a liberator of a nation, a leader of a nation, and Trump went and met with him. Now, we can open that very soon, but needless to say, how concerned were the Druze, the Christians, the Alawites, the Kurds, minorities in the Middle East who were feeling that up until now, Shara was the one in charge of kidnapping their daughters, killing their men, their elderly, their children, directly in charge of that. That was literally their enemy. And then in a twist of, events, Trump is meeting with him and he's talking that they're going to remove the sanctions from over Syria. Khalifa, you have connections in Syria, and I know you're talking to a lot of people there, from the mashayikhs all the way to maybe relatives and people that are living there. What is the vibe there? What is coming out from them regarding this meeting?
Well, it's a mixture of feelings because they are desperate for any economical relief, like any other Syrian that might be out there. But the thing is that what happened with Syria after the fall of Bashar al-Assad regime is that the backbone of the state itself, it's ISIS to the bone. You have the Ministry of Interior Affairs and also the Ministry of Defense. They all build based on the fighters and the people. A lot of them are foreigners to the state. They are not even Syrian. They are Turks. They are coming from all over from Asia, all over the place, and they came to do jihad in Syria, and now they are living in Syria. They bought a lot of places in Damascus, and they feel like they are now the owners of the state. And as for Jawlani himself, he did like rebranding very fast. We all witnessed that. He just removed the military uniform, replaced it with nice suits, and he talked very nice to the Western media, and he said a lot of nice things, including things in favor of treaty with Israel. And he ignored the fact that Israel actually took lands from Syria, from the Golan Heights. He didn't mention anything. And although it might sound good, but it's far from what's happening on the ground. On the ground, we've seen massacres on the Alawites on March 7th. There's some reports saying that there are 20,000 casualties in those events. A lot of what we are getting from Syria can't be documented because after this massacre on March, they conclude how to do massacres, and we've seen that on 2 weeks ago when they massacred the Druze people. A very small amount of documentation came out, but we saw cases like they enter the Druze villages who fought like for 48 hours until they ran out of ammunition. We discussed about those events here on the channel. And you'll see the mayor of Jaramana welcoming the security forces of Syria, and the day later we will find him executed with his own only son. So a lot of mixture of narrative and counter narrative are going on, but one thing is not in dispute as regard not only for the Druze but for all minorities, that Syria is not a safe state for them. I've been talking to Christians, to Alawites, to Druze from all over Syria, and they all basically report the same thing. Like it started on the early days of the fall of Bashar al-Assad. He fell, if I remember correctly, on the 8th of December. On the same month, on Christmas, we had a lot of reports on violations on the Christian community because it's not allowed to show your unique beliefs on public according to Islamic laws. So we had some clashes over there, and it went further until we had this month basically a total jihad declared against Druze based on a fake video claiming that falsely claiming that an respected man of the Druze community spoke wrong words on the Prophet Muhammad, and from that moment on, things went sideways, and basically we had hundreds of casualties for the Druze community. A lot of people disappeared. A lot of people got arrested. Clashes all over the place, and now Sweden is under a siege. And in a second, basically, in no time, like things going so fast, like Jolani last, I don't know, like 6 months ago, he actually sent people to like suicide bombers to infiltrate the Bashar al-Assad regime and fight for their cause. And now he's dressed up, he's meeting with the president of the United States, that without him do anything at all, he just gave him a relief of the sanctions on Syria. And that's a major mistake. Like, you can't give trophies to terror just because they said the words that they know you want to hear. That's not how it goes.
It blows my mind how history is repeating itself. People like to say never again, never again. But imagine that when Hitler was in power, let's say he got assassinated, and then another Nazi general took his seat. And then he started saying, we're not Nazis anymore. But you had a way to communicate with the Jews, the Gypsies, the gay people, the minorities under him. And they kept telling you, no, they're still rounding us up for concentration camps. They're still killing us. The people are still going around and plotting, all kind of false blood labels against us. But the world leaders just ignore that. And they come and they meet with that Nazi general and they start talking about lifting sanctions from Germany and letting them, keep their evil ways. If you would have read that in the books of history 20 years later, everybody would say, what happened? I mean, are they crazy? And everybody would be sitting and said, like, not in our time. It's happening in our time. There's literally, I just got a video today and other videos of reports of assaults on the Druze. They're shelling their towns, they're cutting the electricity, they're trying to kidnap their women and children, trying to slaughter them. And as we're speaking, Trump is going and meeting with these leaders and just removing sanctions. Meanwhile, we also have reports that they're trying to portray the Druze as if the Druze are the problem in Syria. The media, mainstream media is not talking about it at all. And the only thing that is coming out through Al Jazeera and through the official channels of Syria. And they're saying that the Druze are bandits, that the Druze are outlaws, that the Druze are, the terrorists. And that is what is going out. And I'm wondering, first of all, why are these reports coming, Khalifa? Why do you think that they're trying to portray the Druze now as the terrorists?
Well, that's very easy, basically, because they basically hate Israel, but in a way, Druze considered in their eyes as more Jewish than Jews themselves, are more Israeli or more Zionist. And the fact is, it's just because it's an easier enemy to fight with, because the Druze has no IDF to back them, and they are. You have all the community basically is asking for a secular, liberal country, because this country will protect them, will keep their rights safe. And as they see and believe and think, this way of making a country will make Syria prosperous, and it will make Syria thrive. And like any state who've been governed under the Sharia law or Islamic political regime, it's all failing countries. They all failed. And now, basically, in terms of Israel, for those who understand, like if you take Gaza, and now we move it to Syria, and this is what's happening, because now ISIS, which is just a reminder, it means an Islamic state, okay? So we have this Islamic state because those people are the same, their agenda is still the same. I publish their videos, their content, I see what they are talking, I'm in their spaces, I see how they conceive their world, how they see the world. So it's an Islamic state. So if you take Gaza and now move it to Syria, the same case study, but much more fanatic, much more funded, larger play, like they have drones, they have tanks, they have air force, they have they have heavy. It's a much larger country with much more means to spread chaos, if not dealt with this extreme agenda that didn't go anywhere. Syria is still the same place that's been fighting in a civil war for the past 15 years. This civil war didn't end. It's still going on. But now it's been legitimized by the president of the U.S., by no other than the government of the United States. And this is bad news for Israel. And this is a bad news for the Druze, of course. And unless there's something, been cooking that we are not aware of, but, speaking the world, like if I even believe Jolani, because people could change and he's doing, like he's talking the talk. That's no argue in this case. But if there's a number one rule in the Middle East is don't give a damn about the talks. See what the people are doing. And what the people are doing in Syria now, they are trying to do genocide with the Alawites, with the Christians, with the Druze. And things now look very, very bad in terms of the minorities. And nobody cares about the Druze now.
I think that many people who supported Donald Trump, some because they really believed in him, and others because they saw that it was a better alternative than the Democrats and Kamala and Biden, are starting to get really worried now, seeing what's happening here, and they're thinking like, what is going on? Because the things that you, Khalifa, know, and the things that I know, the CIA knows. They probably know even more. So it's not a secret what is happening in Syria. And it's not a secret that there was no real substance to the belief that they're changing, that they want to change. Everything is pointing the other way. They're still singing the old song of Itbah al-Yahud, from the river to the sea, and we're going to free Jerusalem, and we're going to go and pray in Aqsa after we kill everybody. So that's still the rhetoric that they're saying. But then still, Donald Trump came and decided to remove their sanction in hope that they will change. That's like Hamas oppressing his own people, and then he says, "Send me money and I'll stop."
No,
And then
basically, but what? No, if you see what happened, it was a gesture to the crown prince of MBS, and they are. They act like there's no time, because now we are on a time span of the Donald Trump 4 years term, and he has no time to waste, and he needs to coordinate between Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, UAE, and Israel, 5 major forces. We're not discussing Syria and Iran. A lot of people are interested in what's happening with Syria, of course. But if you'll see, they basically poured a lot of money as investments to the US, and the picture is very complex. And just to add to that, I have this form here that I want to share with your audience, just to see. No, that's not it. Why it's doing? Okay, this is it. So this is a chart of minerals and phosphates, which the US considers as a major mineral for the war with China. And as you see, a lot of the places that has significant amounts of phosphates, is one of them is Syria, that has one of the largest in the world. You can see that Morocco is also having large numbers of phosphates, and this basically it's a strategic information for Syria, and this is only one factor. I'm just putting it just to explain how complex the picture is, because as like people, I heard it now today on the Lebanese news broadcast, that they said, as important as Israel could be, they've been buying arms and bombs and a lot of things from the US, and they test their military technology and all that. But if you will sum up all this cooperation between the US and Israel in terms of economy, so we're talking about, I don't know, 17 or 20 billion dollars, which in Israel it's a lot of money. So in this small tour that Trump did, they poured more than $2 trillion on him, investments in the US. And we can see how Qatari money could do They bought the academia, and we saw what they did with Harvard, with all the Ivy League universities and colleges. They are buying sports teams. They are buying FIFA. They
They bought the
bribed the
World
whole
Cup.
FIFA, the World Cup, in $200 billion, and this is the largest natural gas exporter in the world. So we are talking with major interests here, and they all in the favor of. They know how to talk to Donald J. Trump with money and with doing things fast. So in this case, it's easy to not see the Druze and not do the things in the right manner, because the Syrian government, this newly born Syrian government, has a constitution, and this constitution, it says almost, it's custom made to Julani, and it's basically saying that he's the sole ruler. Like we are replacing Bashar al-Assad regime with sectarian Sunni, much more fanatic Islamic regime with Julani, and now we are bombarding the whole cake with tons of money. So this is what's happening.
Someone is asking, is it only Israel's right to influence power? Well, here's the thing. First of all, I think it's very concerning if the Qataris, who literally were buying everything in their way, are managing to buy the support of America. Let's remind people that Qatar is the main sponsor, and that's like proven by so many records and officials and statements right now. That's why in Saudi Arabia, for example, they have a problem with Qatar, because Qatar is the main sponsor of Muslim Brotherhood that is banned in many, many countries, including Arab countries. Qatar are the main sponsors of Hezbollah, of Hamas, of Al-Qaeda, of enemies of the US. Qatar is known to be sponsored of the communist movement in the US colleges and students trying to destroy America from within. Qatar is sponsoring terrorist activity that have American blood on their hands. So Donald Trump going now and choosing to do some kind of business with them because there's money involved in that, and you think that that's going to help the American economy, I think from my perspective at least, there's quite a lot of problem. Now to Israel, to come and start seeing that maybe they're being, I don't want to say sold, I don't think America is selling Israel, but compromised with their security for the interest of money, if it's these minerals in Syria, which I've heard, and I think it's probably a very valid explanation what you said here. America is known, America's world police, and my hat's off, and thanks to America, we're not living under Nazi Germany, and thanks to America, a lot of the bad players are kept at bay. That's 100% true. If it wasn't for America, we'd be living in a very, very terrible place in the world. But America is also known to be going around the world and mingling in different affairs when there is some kind of a benefit. If it's oil, if it's minerals, I don't know what. And maybe they smelled the chance for business here in Syria, for getting exclusiveness over a lot of natural resources. And they said, we're going to jump on that and we're going to keep a blind eye about what's happening to the minorities like the Druze, Alawites, Christians, and the Kurds. I think a lot of people are thinking that.
There is the optimistic way of looking at ways, and we need to consider that. So basically, what is dangerous now, it's not only Qatar, it's also Turkey. Turkey ruled Syria 100 years ago, and ever since, Syria is not a stable country. And it has claims. And also, there's a thing with the political Islamic Brotherhood agenda, which is the ruling power now in Turkey, that is an expanding way of thinking, because it's the same as Iran's way of thinking of, exporting your ideology to the Ummah, to the whole Islamic world. And there's a race towards who leads the Sunni world, a question that people have been fighting over it ever since the fall of the Ottoman Empire 100 years ago. So Turkey is very dangerous to the Israeli, and we also saw that when the clashes between the Druze and the regime of Jolani, we almost had clashes between the Israeli and the Turkish Air Force. So it went very hot, but we didn't clash with them, but we did intimidate one another. So one way to think about it is because the beating itself took place in Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia, under the Crown Prince of MBS, he also has the vision of 2030. He's trying to lead the Islamic world, and he somehow might said to Donald Trump, we know how to handle extreme Islamic terror or agendas, and let us, by giving this gesture to Jolani, we will be charged on what's happening in Syria, and that's a good news also for the minorities and also for Israel and everybody, because they also declare things about the Abrahamic Accord and Syria going into this accord. So it might be a good news in the idea, but still, we need to see changes on the ground, and I don't see that's happening. Basically, what happened, as everybody could see, this guy was a terrorist to the bone until few months, and now he's sitting under in the royal chamber with MBS and Donald J. Trump, and he's basically getting millions of dollars. Just this month, we saw a report saying that now Qatar is paying all the, not all of them, but major salaries of the Syrian government, because it's a failed country. They have no money.
Wow.
So it's for those who remember the Qatari suitcase getting from Ben Gurion Airport to Gaza, and funding all the tunnels and all the terror infrastructure. So this could be the same case again, unless there's something that I'm not aware of, but we don't see any of it on the ground. On the ground, there's a siege on the Druze, there's massacre, there's kidnaps, there's rapes, there's all kind of atrocities. It's a no man's land, and it's not safe for the minorities.
Wow. Is there anyone that is not being paid by Qatari money? You know, we've had the investigation about Qatargate in Israel with Bibi and his cabinet. We have the Americans now, the Europeans, you know, all these radical jihadist terrorists. They're literally going in football teams. They're going and paying everyone. I want us to jump now and watch a video that was officially published by Donald Trump on his official website. And maybe later on,
this friendship, we have a great friendship. I want to wish peace to the Emir and to all Qataris. Working together, we can help the entire region unlock its potential. So I just want to say it's an honor to be with you.
I mean, up until yesterday, it was widely known that Qatar was sponsoring terrorism, enemies of the United States, and also trying to manipulate the people in the United States to bring to some kind of a cultural, social, moral collapse from inside the US. That was the mainstream that was being spoken. You know, how many universities have been paid by Qatar, all these pro-Palestine demonstrations and jihadist movement that are going on, linked directly to Qatar. And then you go to sleep and then you wake up and you watch this video. Our friendship, you're our best friends, we're going to have great friendship. And in the same sentence, $10 billion, friendship, $10 billion. I don't know. I mean, call me crazy. And again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, although it's starting to sound like it, but what is going on?
Well, what's going on is a classic Western mind that doesn't understand the East, and it allows this hypocrisy to be like, and they are so used to it. Like, you know, before he came, they actually offered him, they gave him a royal airplane, $600 million. That's a gift. Like, you know, they are not ashamed of their ways, and they know
And
that
he took it.
yeah, and their idea is they seek for fame, they seek for, you know, all what they look for, because they couldn't care less about money because they are so filthy rich. So they care about only one thing: honor. So this is why they have Al Jazeera. And Al Jazeera, you mentioned before, because I spoke with a lot of specialists, and I could bring here a specialist in the Qatari case, because I've been talking about this thing for a longest
Let's
time.
do that.
So there are journalists in Gaza who proven to be Nukhba fighters for Hamas. So their affinity to terror is very well known, very well documented. This is why even in the Palestinian territories, they closed the Al Jazeera offices, because they knew it's a mayhem agent, because they thrive on mayhem, because it's like an action for them. You know, as long as it's outside their small country, because, you know, it's a small family, basically, a couple of hundred of people. They have this massive amount of money and power, and in order to keep this thing going on, so they need to, you know, just keep the money going and floating to all different directions. As long as it's far from us, everything is okay. So they start fires and wars in Syria just for the sake of amusement, and, you know, it's for them like the World Cup, the same thing.
Yeah. Have you seen the movie The Dictator with Sacha Baruch Cohen?
Of course, yeah.
I think in that movie there is this like joke. I think it was in that movie where there's this Qatari prince that invites these top models to come to him, and he pays them, and then he's like, you know, he pays them a lot of money, and then he can go and have a night with them. And then on his wall there's like a trophy of all the models that he brought, and in some of the pictures there were like Shaquille O'Neal. Like, you know, crazy. Had so much money that he brought Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the joke about Qataris being able to pay and bribe their way through everything it's been going for a while. But the best counter argument that I've heard recently, and I'll give the credit to a dear friend of mine, his name is Yunus. He's a Iranian activist, advocated for the free people of Iran, and he lives in the UK, and he just posted this video.
Trump is a genius.
Let me remove this one first. You know, Ranfield, can you pull that video? I always wanted to say that.
Trump is a genius. Let me explain. Because his recent travel to the Middle East in countries such as Saudi, UAE, and Qatar is to get these countries to align so much with the United States militarily, technologically, and economically, to the point they would be forced to normalize relations with Israel and sign the Abraham Accords. And Israel would soon take over Gaza, and the Arab states would be expected to absorb the Palestinian population. Even the Arab leaders are now pro-Israel. This is something that I've been telling people for the last year, but people don't seem to understand. And what Trump is trying to do is saying that if you invest in America, in turn we will sell you military equipment and also things like AI. That's why Elon Musk, Sam Altman, and the NVIDIA chip companies were all in Saudi. So it's a two-way street. And in terms of the Syrian leader, a lot of people are saying, oh, he's a bad guy, he's a terrorist. Yes, he might be a bad guy and he might be a terrorist, but now he's America's bad guy, because Trump has said to the Syrian leader, if you get rid of Hamas and if you take control of the country and introduce democracy, we will lift sanctions. When you take Syria away from Russia and Iran, they become isolated. So they have no choice but to come to the negotiating table, which will lead to the end of war in Ukraine and Russia, and hopefully the collapse of the Islamic Republic or a nuclear deal.
So, first of all, I want to say thank you to Shana. That's very gracious of you. It's the first time that you're not writing for the Hobbit feats. Trump can't use the plane for years, and Air Force One have been waiting for a new plane since the beginning of Trump 2016 presidency. Doesn't make it moral, but he won't be able to use it likely. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. So what Yunus here came and said, and I think, that goes to the saying, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. And also in a strategic way, don't let your enemies fall into the hands of the bigger enemies. So maybe through that, Trump is an old cat, and he probably have a lot of negotiation tricks up his sleeve. And he have a team of advisors, which I hope and I believe that are wise and smart. So maybe
just a second. I have an announcement to make, because I just got a phone call and I said we have surprises. So I'm glad to say that Professor Shar Shartouni is about to enter our broadcast, and this man is I'm happy to announce that he's one of the bravest people in Lebanon, a man that I admire myself. We never talked before, but he basically was a loudspeaker against Hezbollah and what they're doing, and all what's happening with their ideology, and he was basically criticizing them live in Lebanon, and he almost got imprisoned, and he had to escape Lebanon, and he's now in the States, and he's joining our stream, and that's a wonderful news.
That is big news. That's a big caliber guy. I mean, do you say he's wanted, right? That's why he ran away. He's wanted by the jihadists. That's why he fled.
By Hezbollah, because they basically control the country. They have country within the country, so they use their corrupt forces to try to put him to investigations and put him in front of court for speaking, saying that maybe Israel and a peace treatment with Israel is something that we should consider, because I don't know if your audience know that, but according to Lebanese law, Israel is an eternal enemy for the state of Lebanon. So this is the charges that they wanted to put him in with.
Come and tell me that a war is not religious, and then in the same sentence you say they are eternal enemies. That means that they can never change. They must be our enemies. They must be fought to the last drop of blood. But we're a democracy, guys. It's a religious war. You don't do that to anyone who's not a religious enemy. But anyway, I've seen a lot of people commenting here about a cup of coffee. I guess Trump was offered a cup of coffee and he refused it, something like that. So I don't know what, but yeah, here.
الو
Hi.
يا مرحبا يا مرحبا شكرا على الدعوة.
شكرا لك، شرف كثير كبير وأنا كثير سعيد. We will move to English because we have
We will move to English. No problem. It's no problem.
But I am extremely
Thank you for the
happy.
invitation anyhow.
Thank you for being who you are. I'm a big admirer of yours for your work. I listened to all your interviews for the past few months, and you are one of the people that gave me hope in humanity, in the Arab people, in the Lebanese politics. But in my opinion, that's a very sad truth that you had to flee the country from Lebanon a beautiful country. We used to call it the Switzerland of the Middle East. We all, even here in Israel, we admire Lebanon, such a beautiful country, and it's been occupied by thugs and thieves that only maneuver people just to create chaos and mayhem. And thank you for your word. You're talking with us from DC now, from Washington?
Yes, I'm talking to you, from Washington, D.C. Thank you anyhow for the invitation, and I hope, that we can make the best of this time we're going to share together.
Great. So if you please just let us know a bit about yourself.
Yes.
Where do you teach? What do you do for a living?
I am Charles Shertuni. I am a retired professor, a university professor who taught sociology and politics and geopolitics as well. And for the time being, I'm still teaching, but as a part-timer, but at the same time, I'm working as a journalist, more specifically a columnist, and as a consultant as well. Since I left the country, I've been, pursuing my journalistic activity, and I'm still running a few PhD dissertations that were not yet finished with me, so I need to finish them off before, quitting teaching for good. And otherwise, for the time being, I'm away from the country. I am under trial. We're going to have a trial by the 4th of June. So I'm going to be represented by two lawyers under the accusation of being an accomplice to the state of Israel, which is totally ridiculous, totally, nonsense. I've never been doing anything. I am a man who is a free thinker, and I think, that it's about time for us to achieve peace with the state of Israel and not be under the mercy of thugs and political movements that have been instrumentalized by power politics, be it Iranian or be it Islamist, power politics, who have been using and misusing the suffering of civilians in Gaza and of Lebanese on the Lebanese territories.
You're such a perfect guest, and you arrived just in a perfect timing, because we were discussing Trump's trip to the Middle East, and I would like to see how you see the things, knowing what you know about Syria, what you know about the Trump. I don't know. How do you see it?
I think the initiative of President Trump is pioneering. There is no doubt about it that the initiative of President Trump is pioneering. He is trying to build up on something that he started in earlier time, more specifically, the Abrahamic Accord. What he is trying to do now is to elaborate further on the Abrahamic Accord, and at the same time to extend its application and to extend, its reach to the rest of the region. And extending its reach over the region has come at the heels of the Israeli counteroffensive, which has changed the political and the strategic dynamics in the region. And by saying this, it has made possible the pursuing of the peace accords at the regional level. If it were not the new political and strategic dynamics initiated by the Israeli counteroffensive, this idea of peace could have been an elusive idea, an illusion, a wishful thinking, not more than this. So this is the proper context. This is the proper political dynamic that is going to enable President Trump to further, his approach to the peace in the Middle East. It's about time for us to go into the peace agreements extended to the rest of the region.
hope that this is the case, and we've been looking about the, 6 months ago, or I don't know, a few months ago, it wasn't even considerable to have Lebanese person talking about peace in Israeli podcast, and we are definitely in a new stages. But the thing is, like, if we look on Lebanon, there are still like the pressures is coming from the outside, but inside you see that they don't know how to fight terrorism. They're still not clashing with Hezbollah, trying to disarm him.
Sir, let me tell you one thing. I mean, what's happening in the country is very simple. The change and the transformation of the strategic and political dynamic throughout the region made possible whatever political transformations, whatever peaceful yearnings we have been talking about. This could have not been possible if it were not the major, transformations that have taken place at the strategic landscape. Now, what's happening in Lebanon has nothing to do, with the elections of Joseph Aoun and the nomination of, I call, Nawaf Salam and the pro-Hamas government, because what we have now in Lebanon is a pro-Hamas government. It's not a Lebanese government, unfortunately. I mean, not even a PLO. It's a Hamas government. It's as simple as that. So, having said this, I would venture and say the following. Nobody is asking for, the violent disarmament of Hezbollah. Hezbollah has to abide by the international agreements of 1701, 1680, and 1559, which stipulate the disarmament of the illegal, military groups that are operating on the ground. No matter who they are, they will have to surrender their armaments and to give to the Lebanese army whatever they have been accumulating over time. What they have been accumulating over time is something of a parallel, army. What they have is a parallel army. Fortunately, they were destroyed. They were destroyed, at least for 80 to 90% of their, potential. But what is happening nowadays, that they are trying to return whatever is left of the armament into the internal political situation and instrumentalizing those armaments in order to upset, the political and military balances within the country and incite for civil war. That's what they are trying to do. And by doing this, they are trying to give another opportunity for the Iranians to play havoc and to wreak havoc at the regional level. What is left now is Gaza and Lebanon. These are the only platforms that are left for them in order to disrupt, the peace process and the peace dynamics that have been, initiated, be it militarily speaking on the Israeli side, or be it politically speaking now with the peace offers that were submitted and that were suggested by President Trump.
But here's my question. You mentioned here several sanctions and resolutions, with numbers and etc. These are Western terminologies that, from my experience, a lot of the factions in the Arab world, including governments and very radical, very powerful establishment, they don't abide by these rules. They abuse them. For example, Iran, best case example, we've been talking with them for a long time, about a nuclear. So, no, we're just going to have it for research, for studies, for etc. Well, it's obvious that they're going towards a nuclear bomb and to, establish some kind of a Sharia, Islamic dominant, in the region and then later on in the world. That's their dream. Hezbollah is the same. It's a religious faction. It's deeply rooted in the religion. And that's why to try to talk with them with Western legal, words, I don't think that's going to be effective. And my question is also, is Syria being the same? Are they fooling? Is that just another case of an Arab radical country fooling the West? And the West is falling for it because they think, they said words like democracy and freedom. Let's give them money. Is that going to come back in our face?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It's a very shrewd, as a matter of fact, interrogation of reality. I agree, Mr. Ashar, with what you're saying. It makes full sense. Let me start by saying the following. Betting on the conversion of Hezbollah is a waste of time. Defeating Hezbollah is the solution. Hezbollah has been defeated, practically speaking, on the ground. What Hezbollah is trying to do at this period of time is to reverse, the military defeat by changing the political equation within the country itself. And what I regret, and what we regret mostly, is that those who are in power are playing his game. They are playing into his game. They are buying his game. They are co-opting his game. And this is what makes it a little bit awkward, which means, you have no choice. You are either going to abide by the international resolution, otherwise violence is going to take over. And violence this time is going to be sanctioned by new geopolitical facts, on the ground. And the new geopolitical facts on the ground are going to be, this time, irreversible, which means the damage is going to be a structural one. The damage is going to wreak, for instance, havoc within Lebanon itself and make the healing of Lebanon almost impossible. So there is no other choice. You either opt for peace and finish off with this episode and move on to something that is constructive. We have differences with Israel, obviously. We need to sit and talk with the Israelis. There is no question about it. But therefore, we have to make this leap of faith whereby we give peace a chance. And peace is sitting and having a civilized conversation between rational people who are careful about mutual rights, mutual interests, and for the welfare of everybody. That's it.
So here's another question, and Khalifa mentioned that as well. I grew up on stories from Lebanon, being this beautiful, progressive Arab country. And, we grew up on watching Lebanese MTV because it was more Westerner than the Israeli TV shows. And the people who are living in Lebanon now, they're still alive. The people who were back then when Lebanon was the Paris of the Middle East. Aren't there enough people in Lebanon that are seeing the snowball effect, that Lebanon is just going down in a drastic, speed into chaos, into becoming hell, into becoming the next, Iraq, Afghanistan, the next Gaza? Do they not want to stop that? Because I don't see any other alternative. The way that it's going right now, the poverty, the radicalism, the hate that they have towards the West, the hate that they have towards free thinkers. People like you, bright minds in Lebanon are having to flee because they dare to think and suggest something. Isn't there enough people in Lebanon that actually are seeing that and are caring? Or do you think, خلاص راح عليهن, they're
I agree. What you're saying makes full sense. Of course, there are people who are very much determined to oversee radical change in Lebanon, in the sense that it's about time for us to finish with 65 years of open wars and open conflicts on our, territories, which have destroyed the country, which may have made impossible the reconstruction of this country, in spite of whatever we have been witnessing so far. You have been testifying now that we were able to achieve. We were able to overcome, the legacy of the first war. And now we are coping, with the outcomes of the second and the third war, etc. So it's about time for us to finish. Okay. The problem is that you have the ideologues, be they leftist or be they Islamists or be they people who are lazy enough not to reconsider, the situation, not to look at the situation in a critical manner and say enough is enough. It's about time to move on to another stage, etc., and start addressing issues in a civilized manner. Address the issues from the perspective of rational conflict resolution, no matter how critical the issues might be, but still there is a possibility for us to address them, etc., etc. And I have given several examples. when the Israelis have signed up the armistice accord in 1949 with Lebanon, nothing happened between 49,
right?
Between 49,
No, I think Khalifa said he couldn't hear you, but I'm saying that I'm hearing you.
Oh, I'm saying, when the Israelis signed up the accords with the Lebanese in 1949, so between 49 and 1965, we didn't have any clash. You would say, okay, the Israelis do not abide by agreements. That's not true. And the proof to it is that the armistice accord between 49 and 65 was respected, was upheld by the Israelis without any problem. There hasn't been any single clash. The clash started when the territories of South Lebanon were instrumentalized by the PLO, were instrumentalized by radical Marxist group who have converged from throughout the world and who have been converging, with other power politics, be they international, Cold War politics or Arab Cold War politics. So it's very simple. We have had examples. Let me go back to the war of 2006. After the war of 2006, there has been, also an armistice accord. And this armistice accord was respected until lately, which means until the 7th of October, 2023. After that, we have moved on to another stage. And this other stage is very simple. Israel, as a reader of international politics, you have to read it the way it is not anymore, willing to condone with the situation before the 7th of October 2023. And this was made very clear by the Israelis. You want to misread it, you don't want to read it, you want to look at it, you don't want to look at it, it's up to you. But this is a fact that you have to consider if we are to move onto another stage. And what is more important, that this new political and strategic given now has been co-opted by a broader policy process, namely the Abraham Accord and their extension to the rest of the region, which means, we are now at another dynamic, which is a dynamic based on looking for peace and looking forward. That's it. We don't need to go back to an earlier stage. It's over.
Yeah, you mentioned something very interesting here. Israel before October 7, Israel after October 7. It's a little bit of a different country. Israel, after the Holocaust, swore never again, and they made it to themselves a promise. They won't let this happen again, by all means. And then they kind of thought, okay, it's never going to happen again. And then October 7 woke them up to realize, wow, this almost happened again. And then they looked, over the border in the north, and they saw that Hezbollah is planning the same thing. And then Israel said, khalas. They pressed the button, Pagers, boom, boom, airplanes, they went around and just started showing the real might and force of the IDF and completely, dismantling almost the Middle East from all of its terrorist factions and Iran, etc. And I'm hoping that also in the Arab world, they started realizing, but I'm not so sure it's happening, that this dream of annihilating the Jews, this dream of taking Jerusalem and killing all the Jews in this land, this dream have not brought anyone a good result. All the countries that had this dream, look at them now. Israel have become one of the richest countries in the Middle East. And we were talking to this lady from Lebanon, I forgot her name, but Khalifa invited her, and she was telling us
Nadine. He knows Nadine.
And she was telling us that Lebanon is considered more poor than Yemen now.
Yeah.
And I was like, when I heard that, I was like, my God, how did that happen? Lebanon, who was known for its, coffee shops and restaurants and nightlife and and activities and tourism, is now in a state of poverty that is more poor than one of the poorest countries, in the region. And aren't they waking up and realizing, khalas, stop with this dream of wanting to destroy the Jews and start a dream of wanting to build your own life. And maybe with that, you can have peace with the Jews, and then you can have, the Middle East can become more successful than Europe. But I don't know. Like a lot of the Lebanese that I see the comments that they keep showing my videos are usually, you know, like you guys are brainwashed, Israel is a devil, etc., etc. So that anti-Semitism that is so deeply rooted.
Yeah, I fully agree. You know, this is well embedded, you know, anti-Semitism that makes no sense. Okay, made of prejudice, made of preconceived ideas, made of hatred which has no grounding whatsoever, etc., etc. Okay, you have engaged in war, so you had war. You were trying to annihilate the state of Israel. You were faced with a counteroffensive that defeated you. So you have to accept facts. You want to have war, you had war. So you are defeated, you have to accept defeat and make sure that this is not going to repeat. And for this not to repeat, we have to sit around, you know, a conference table and deal with the problems and give away, you know, the hoax of eradicating the state of Israel from this part of the world. That makes no sense anymore. It's anymore, you know, it's irrelevant by whichever means, under whichever consideration, it makes no sense. And the reason for this is very simple. There is a new power balance that is dissuasive enough in order to sit, be rational, and consider issues, okay, in a very realistic manner. And this is going to be the introduction to something that is more positive. Now we have stopped war. Let's see now how we are going to build peace. And this is what matters at this stage.
Amen to that. But this is what's interesting about the Lebanese case, because I've been following up on it and everything was going right. And if I'll give an example from the natural world, like Israel, what it did, like it's like a mother hawk, you know, when she gives her babies to feed, she gives them a live mouse or something that is wounded, and just to get him used to the idea to swallow their food. And this is what basically she did with Hezbollah, with the Lebanese people, saying, we almost killed him, now you need to finish the job, because you as a country need to take this decision of saying no more to that. And then Nawaf Salam came. What brought Nawaf Salam, that you described as Hamas government, to power? This mystery I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, we did not understand it either. We still don't have an answer to this question so far. I think, you know, these are internal political dynamics, but I blame it on some of the external actors. I blame it on some of the external actors for one simple reason. I was in Paris at the time, and I was very vocal, telling the French and telling more specifically the French presidency that there is an urgent need to interfere in the formation of the new cabinet. And the new cabinet should be stewarded by the French, the Americans, and the Western world by and large. There is a need for this. We cannot make the transition and leave it unto the Lebanese by themselves, because the Lebanese by themselves, they're gonna foil the process and they're gonna fail the process. And that's what we ended up having. That's what we ended up having, which means, you know, the petty, you know, calculation of Lebanese politicking have brought this guy into power. Whereas we could have had a more shepherded political process whereby France, the United States would have stewarded the Lebanese, accompanied the Lebanese in order to move into a more predictable, into a more, you know, focused transition with clear objectives that are likely to be enforced. They have set the objectives, but they didn't set the means. Okay, we have to do away with Hezbollah armaments. What did we do in order to make this possible? Nothing. We brought someone who has a pro-Palestinian agenda and who is not careful about what's going to happen, you know, in Lebanon. Okay, so how is it going to happen? There is no miracle. And therefore, he kept himself, away from addressing this issue. When someone asks him about the issue, oh, the Israeli variables, I don't need to deal with them. I've never dealt with them, and I'm not going. So why are you in the position of prime minister? We are here to address real political problems, real political and strategic issues. You are trying to escape, you are trying to ignore, or you are trying to privilege your, how would you call it, ideological considerations to the imperatives of what we call realpolitik. You are dismissive of realpolitik. How are you? Oh, that's...
Yeah, your picture just
Hello?
flipped.
Yeah, we were cut.
you.
We were cut. We were cut.
We still hear you. Just the picture, maybe.
The picture just flipped.
I'm just pressing the button.
Here we go. Here we go.
Yeah, great.
I think so.
No, it still needs.
Oh, shoot.
Why is it?
Aha.
Okay, perfect.
No, now it's. Here we go.
Oh my goodness. What's happening?
It's good. It's good. It's waking up. It's waking up the students. It's waking up the class.
Yeah. So the issue that these people have come to power, they have overlooked the fact that if it were not the new dynamics initiated by the Israeli counteroffensive, they would have never been in power. That's very obvious. They want to ignore it. They want to overlook it. And worse than that, because you have militant ministers, Ghassan Salemi, or what's his name, Tariq Mitre, or Rima Karami. These are militant, Hamas militants. I mean, Rima Karami, the Minister of Education, comes, and she says, we need to have, oh my God.
No, we see you. Charles? We lost the connection, I guess.
Yeah, maybe let's continue until he comes back. To those who joined in the middle, this guy is a fascinating guy. He's and Khalifa would know more about him than me because he's been really following for a long time. He was actually super excited. He was sending me the messages. Oh my God, you have no idea who did I brought you guys today, the audience. And he was telling me it's a scholar that I've been following his work, studying his work. He's a very intelligent, very bright, free thinker mind from Lebanon who had to flee the country due to threat to his life because they were accusing him of, working for the Israeli government just because he was suggesting a chance to maybe live in peace with Israel and to talk about normalization of the relationship. And it's a very sad reality that, some countries in the world, they will hunt you down if you start suggesting a notion of peace. And, hearing here now, I've been seeing comments in the people here saying that he's based, that he's, spot on. This is brilliant. So I'm so glad we have him. Charles, whenever your mic is working and you're working, the stage is yours. You're bringing us pure gold out of your mouth. I'm just the entertainer filling the time now.
This is why I was so excited about having him, because I don't know if your audience know, but I have a Telegram channel and I take media outlets from the Arabic media and I put Hebrew subtitles for people to hear. And Shar Shartuni was one of my favorite. He has such, in prime time news saying that we should go to peace with Israel and there's no such thing as eternal enemy, and we should like common sense things in the Lebanese atmosphere is so ungranted, like it's not forgiven, because he basically had to flee the country. He had Hezbollah actually by the control of the government tried to persecute this man and put him in court just for saying pro-peace agendas, and they were captivated, mesmerized by this Hassan Nasrallah guy who actually just took their minds out. We got him out of the broadcast, but I hope he comes up
back.
again.
Actually, a funny story is that I had a Jewish friend of mine that I was talking to the other day. I was in a conference in Berlin for Israel and Germany, and he was telling me, I wonder what the Lebanese are thinking right now, because up until several months ago, Nasrallah was just preaching so confidently, like that's it. The Israel is done. This country is falling down. It's done. It's just a matter of time. And in my lifetime, he was saying, marching to Jerusalem and praying Jerusalem, and from the river to the sea. And he was very, very convinced, or at least, when laying that message. And then he said Israel just pressed the button, tick, killed him, killed everybody there. In 2 weeks, dismantled Hezbollah. And he was wondering, what was that an eye opener for the Lebanese?
Well, it's like a cult. How deep are you embedded? So a lot of them that grew up on the narrative that they are going to destroy Israel, being destroyed themselves, they can't accept reality. So there's a lot of people in Lebanon today that thinks that Nasrallah is still alive and they actually won the war. Wherever everybody who sees it knows that Israel just demolished Hezbollah, there are people still believing that Hezbollah won the war with Israel now, and they won so much that Israel could still bomb them and assassin whatever they like and do whatever they want, but those people can't accept reality. They live in a different reality. You are muted.
Yes. Charles, if you're back with us, we want to hear more from you. Yes.
Shall we continue? We were having a discussion why the government has not operated. And I was saying, my last statement, that we had this Minister of Education who suggested, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, she submitted a proposal to the Council of Ministers saying that we need to have an hour per week, in order to explain the resistance of Hamas. We've never had such a thing in our country. Ideological indoctrination in schools. What are we? Who are we? Are we in the Soviet Union? Are we in, the Islamic regime in Iran? Are we, in North Korea? This is really unbelievable. And this is a woman who supposedly was the head of the education department at the American University of Beirut. This is to tell you, ideological blindness of wokeism and leftist wokeism, has reached, such a scale of intellectual obscenity that, like, you would never believe. How can you say we are here, to instrumentalize the classroom in order to promote a political agenda, and inviting and advocating for war and trying to make sure that Hamas has never done anything, etc., okay, and making sure to dismiss the fact that if it were not Hamas, Gaza would have never been destroyed. Gaza would have never had the tragedies it had. Gaza would have never had the problems that it is dealing with at this point of time. They have destroyed Gaza by using, the famous strategy of the human shields strategy, using the civilian population in order to promote their political agenda, whatever might be the cause, and then blaming it on Israel, as if Israel was fighting itself. They don't want to see the two sides of the picture, that there is war, there is a true war.
So if you will get an invitation to come to Israel, would you like to come and speak here?
For the time being, I would never do it, for one simple reason, that I have enough problem, I have nothing against the idea, from a principled point of view, okay? But from a practical point of view, I have enough problems to deal with, at this stage.
When being labeled as an Israeli agent. But
Yeah, that's right.
you mentioned a very good point that if it wasn't for Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood, Gaza would have been a very good place. I remember with my own eyes, my father taking me to Gaza, not once, not twice, on the way to Eilat, to Beersheba. We'll pass by Gaza and we'll go there. There was no checkpoint. There was nothing. We'll just go there, stop the car. Sometimes we'll not even lock the car. That was back in the days where things were just more normal. And then we'll go and buy knafe, baklava, fish, and finish eating it in a restaurant and sit on the beach, go swimming in the beach, and fishermen or local people will come and talk to you. Min wain inti, kif halak? It was so normalized. Really, it was so normalized. And then you look at Gaza now, oppressing their own people, executing their own people in the street, a death cult. Israelis would not even dare to think of entering Gaza. And in a lifetime, it got changed from a place that had potential and had a future. And people from Gaza used to come to Haifa, where I used to live and work there. My father used to work with them. Now no one is coming out of there. It's just, it's insane how dangerous this ideology. And like you said, it was a criminal behavior of infiltrating the schools and poisoning the minds of children. For the sake of some political gain, you literally destroy the life of generations to come. And that is the criminal behavior that the world should be demanding, people to come to justice for. How dare you to come and pollute the minds of these young Lebanese, young Syrians, young, Gazans, to fill their heads with such hate that they grow up and they want to do the things that they did. Sorry for ranting on it, but it's just something that I remember. I remember that.
I mean, Mansour, I fully agree on what you're saying. This is, how this kind of ideologies proceed. They start dehumanizing, oh, Israelis are not humans. Oh my God. Oh yeah, thank you. We didn't know that. You're teaching us that Israelis are not humans. This kind of nonsense that has been nurtured over, decades and decades and decades. You tell them, the Israelis are normal people. These are people that you can talk to. These are people who have, feelings that you have. They have compassion like you have. They have a sense of justice like you have, etc. So stop, demonizing people. Stop dehumanizing people. Once you start, giving away these cliché and talking to people, then everything becomes possible. Engaging others becomes possible. But when you have all the ideological blinders, blinding you into reality, what are you expecting? What are you expecting? Violence and violence and violence. It takes the head of the education department becoming at the AUB, becoming a minister of education to start, indoctrination in our schools, which we've never had in Lebanon. Lebanon is not Syria. Lebanon is not Saudi Arabia. Lebanon is not. We are a liberal country. We are a liberal country. That's it. We believe in liberalism. We believe, in tolerance. We believe in, intellectual, rational inquiries. We're not here, to preach neither hatred nor ideology nor nothing. Sit down and talk. These are people with whom you can engage in a rational and ethical way of talking and conversing. Unfortunately, ideology plays a major role in, killing the chances of peace in this part of the world by poisoning the minds and, of children more specifically. This is not to talk about the elderly. The elderly are already intoxicated.
We should say for our audience that you are Christian and we are a Druze podcast. We are both Israeli Druze and we discuss a lot about the relationship between the Druze, and you were talking about poisoning the minds of people. So in my opinion, and we discussed that with Nadine, that the Druze community in Lebanon, their minds been poisoned. Like I've seen a lot of vocal voices against Hezbollah, against their tactics or ideologies like yourself from the Christian part of Lebanon, but I'm missing that from the Druze. So if you can tell us, like, are you working together, Druze and
Of course, I
Christians?
wanna elaborate on that. First, we would like, to thank Nadine, because Nadine is the first one, to challenge the script of Walid Jumblat, because the source of poisoning the minds of the Druze youth is Walid Jumblat. If it were not Walid Jumblat, Druze are much more open, to discussion and etc., etc. It took this young lady living in the United States, etc., to challenge and to say, what you're saying doesn't make sense. What you're saying is poisoning the minds for no use. What you're saying doesn't help neither the cause of stability in Lebanon nor the cause of peace in the Middle East. If you were to be careful about peace in the Middle East, you have to open up, to the realities of the Middle East, so that we can search for a new way, to deal with these problems. Stop, the ideological cliches which have no resonance whatsoever, in the minds of the youth. The youth are looking for something different than the usual script, the conventional script of hatred and hatred and hatred. That's all what we know. And that's all what we are trying to transmit to the new generations. That makes no sense.
So
anymore.
Lebanon used to be a Christian nation. That was at least, the foundation that they were on. And then they were, converted or hijacked, by majority to the way of Islam. And then, we saw what is happening nowadays. I'm going to ask you an honest question. It might be a hard question, but it's two questions. Do you think that Lebanon have a real chance of going back to how it was, or, going to a better place? And if so, what do you think needs to be done?
That's a very, very important question. Oh, shit.
No, we hear you well.
No, we hear you perfectly. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I know what is the problem,
Yeah, let's give him a few minutes to.
Phone is overloaded. This is the problem. This is what makes it awkward. Now I've realized what's the problem. The problem that the phone is overloaded. It's overcharged. Yeah, I should have. Yeah, that's why it's making it a little bit difficult, because I've never had this problem. That's why I'm amazed. Mansour, it's a very important question that you have been raising. Yes, we are yearning to go back to the early days of a pluralistic democracy, of a pacified society, of a society where, everyone can voice his opinion, everyone can have his own lifestyle, everyone engages with everyone, in full respect, be it in terms of civics, be it in terms of ethical commitments, be it in terms of, openness to the problems and to the questions of others, whatever these problems and whatever these issues are about, etc., etc.
His phone is
overloading.
Is overloading, yeah.
What a fascinating guy. I've been hearing.
He's a fascinating guy. Yeah,
we should invite him more, man.
He's a hero of mine, definitely. I was so excited that for me, I just like to listen to him, because he speaks marvels in my opinion. Such a brave man.
Yeah, but
and he just proved what we discussed earlier, that the maddest of them all is Nadine Barakat. Like she's the most Druze warrior in whole Lebanon, which is amazing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can tell you one thing. I discovered Nadine the way you have discovered Nadine. I discovered her through the social media a few months ago, and I was fascinated. I've never known her before. I was always fascinated by her bluntness. She's frank, she's straightforward, she's not shy about saying things in whichever respect, etc. And her intellectual and her moral and political courage. And I always warned her, I said, please be careful. Please be careful. Because she's very open and she's very, straightforward about what she thinks. And this is something that a lot of these people dislike. They don't want to have openness. They don't want to have an open conversation. They don't want to have what I call, a civic conversation whereby we state our opinions without the fear of being, retaliated by I don't know whom and I don't know whom. Why? Because I'm speaking something that is not shared by you. So what? This is a reason for us to engage in further discussions. That's the problem. And we were in this, intellectual and humanitarian environment in Lebanon. All of this was over when PLO and the leftist coalition managed to destroy the country since 1965 onwards. This liberal period was degrading gradually and progressively. Otherwise, we would have never been in this situation of 65 years of open-ended conflicts. And
Wow.
what is the outcome of this? Destruction, miseries, migration, whatever.
Why do you think it's always the left and the radical jihad coming together? I would like to hear your thought about that. How come they're so different on paper?
Yeah, I mean, on paper they're so different, but practically they're not. Practically, because these people have a totalitarian vision. They don't tolerate, pluralism of whichever nature, be it religious pluralism, be it political pluralism, be it intellectual pluralism. Whatever kind of pluralism is something that is totally, dismissed from their political and ideological point of views. They cannot tolerate, pluralism. That is, what makes the common platform between these people. They are shying away from whatever challenges their beliefs. They don't want to hear something which contradicts their beliefs, which questions, their beliefs. And the problem is very simple. Let's sit and talk. What's the problem? Why should we go into war in order to convince each other of each other's opinions? There is no reason for this. Look at the Western democracies, the way they live. They disagree among themselves. They go into election. They rotate in power. They profess whatever political or social or intellectual or religious point of views, etc., etc. And they don't need to kill each other. I don't see what is the urge for you, to kill another person because this other person disagrees with you. I mean, disagreement is normal. Can you imagine a society without disagreements? It's totalitarianism.
Terrible.
It's totalitarianism. This is the common denominator between these guys.
I love freedom. But maybe back to the question, because you got cut with the connection before. The question is, what do you think if Lebanon have a future to go back to the good days, and what could be the solution?
Yeah. Yes, Lebanon do have a future. But let me tell you what. Lebanon has a future once we have peace in the region. And the key to the regional peace is the achievement of peace with Israel. The key to peace in the region is to achieve peace with Israel. And I think, Al-Julani, it's not anymore Al-Julani. Ahmed al-Shara understood it. But now he has to act on the basis of this conviction. He has to get away with all the jihadists that came streaming, into Syria throughout the last 14 years after all the atrocities of the Assad regime and the continued atrocities of the Islamists that took over, etc. He has to shed this whole past behind him, engage irreversibly the peace process, and, open up to the Israelis, open up, to the liberal Lebanese, open up, to the strategic and commercial and economic complementarity and interdependence that should govern the future of the region. We are here to complement each other, each one in its own right, okay? And therefore, this is the chance in order to revive pluralism, tolerance, and what Popper qualified the open society versus closed societies, the open societies and the enemies of open societies. We are here to advocate for open societies. And there is no open society without peace. There is no peace without democracy. There is no democracy without having Democrats, people who are, who have liberal intellectual views and that are ready to commit themselves, to these liberal views and engage others on the very basis of these liberal views.
So in your eyes, we're going to see peace talks between Israel and Lebanon anytime soon?
Maybe not, but at least all what I can say at this period of time, that the minds are ready. The idea has made tremendous progress. The people who are vocal about this idea have become more and more, encouraged to voice their opinions, to state their views, to advocate for peace. This has become more and more vocal. And mind you, in a very short time, which means if I, for instance, compare it to when I left, which means, last November, end of last November, and now the idea has made a tremendous progress. I was the single one to talk about it, openly with another film producer and a friend, Yusuf Al-Khoury. Yes, Yusuf Al-Khoury. And now, you have so many other people talking about it. I mean,
Indeed.
Some of them are talking about it in a very opportunistic way, such as Wahab, etc. But some others started voicing their views, within the Druze community. And I was watching today, Makram Rabah, for the first time, Makram speaks about it. He's a vocal opponent of Hezbollah, that's for sure. He's been for quite a time, since, they assassinated his friend Luqman Slim. But now, for the first time, Makram is speaking about it openly. A few weeks ago, I was talking with Nadine about the position of Makram. She said he will never dare say it. And now, Makram, 2 weeks after, is open about it, he's vocal about it.
He's under
At
the
one point, he
occupation
would
of
try totally this position.
Just to tell our audience, he's under the occupation of Walid Jumblat. He's a Walid Jumblat guy.
Yeah, it's not only under the occupation of Walid Jumblat, they are all the time under his threat, which means, you're going to pay for it. Stop. It's okay. You cannot, blackmail the whole, Druze community forever. These are people that are highly educated. These are people that have intellectual openness, that have, cultural openness. You cannot anymore talk to them as if you were the feudal lord and they will have to submit to your diktat. It's over. These days are over. These are new generations who have traveled the world. And they cannot, still confined, in the bounds of your own ideological and interest scripts, because mostly it is his interests, because he doesn't give a damn about ideology. All what he cares about, how am I going to keep up, my power over these people? Unchallenged. That's the issue, which means you have no say over politics. I'm the only one who has a say over politics. Oh, come on. The whole, intellectual Druze, youth, etc., have no say, and you have the only say in this community, and nobody has the right to speak his mind but you and your son eventually, and even the poor guy is muzzled.
Yeah, and I understand what you are talking about, and this is a case that we watch closely. We don't want to take too much of your time, but I would really hope to do it in another time. It's so refreshing and educating hearing you in your own voice. And I need to add to what you said. You and Yusuf Khoury basically handedly started the whole new discourse that wasn't existing in Lebanon, not publicly, not any place, and you are paying private price on that. And I salute you in all my heart. Like your efforts and endeavor is so inspiring to a lot of us. It inspired me for the longest time, and I truly thank you for your job. And we should do this again.
Oh
Mansour,
yeah,
would
I
you-
mean, thank you, Khalifa, thank you, Mansour. It's very kind of you just to invite me, and you know, it's a new stage in this public conversation. I thank you. You know, when I accepted the invitation, because I wanted, you know, this discussion to move onto another stage. We need to get it onto another stage. It's about time to be vocal about these issues and to open up the borders, and the virtual borders are very important, because when we are breaking the virtual borders, it's, you know, the introduction to the opening of the real borders.
Definitely.
The pleasure is ours, Charles. The pleasure is ours. I'm so impressed by what you said. And I think that if Lebanon will ever go back to its days, they will be teaching in the books of history about people like you, like Khoury, like Nadine, you know, people that opened the way for this discord. It is our pleasure to have you here, and I wish we can have you more. I feel like even the crowd here was very, very impressed by what you said. I will say this, you know, people in Israel, at least the people that I know in Israel, and I know a lot, they don't hate the Lebanese people. They have no beef with them. They wish for the days that they can have their children play together and have peace with them. The majority of people in Israel don't hate our neighbors. It's only radicals, small factions of them. And just the fact that I can, and if there's anyone listening to this right now from Lebanon, from Syria, look at this. Myself and Khalifa, we are Arabs, we are Druze. We can freely speak and say that we love you guys. We have no problem with you, and we wish, and no one is going to blame us to be traitors, to be spies for the Lebanese government or Iran, and we would not have to flee our country, which is a badge of shame for the government of Lebanon, that you have people like Charles now, like Nadine, that need to flee the country for their own safety just because they bring an idea that you might not agree with. And I wish for a day that you would not scare the liberal thinking, the free thinkers, the scientists, the scholars, the historians out of your society, because that's a very, very dangerous place to be. And, you know, we pray for the peace in Lebanon. And thank you so much, Charles. It's really, really our pleasure.
Thank you for welcoming me. And let me remind you, I'm a 71 years old man, you know. Okay, you know, accusing me at the age of 71 of being a traitor and an agent. Thank you very much. After having spent, you know, 71 years, you know, teaching all my life, etc., etc. This is to tell you, you know, when you are dealing with obscurantism and ideology, this is the outcome. What a shame. What a shame.
What a shame.
That's all what I can say.
But you are building
Thank you
a
very
better
much,
future.
and I hope that we're going to see each other in real time.
I hope, inshallah.
We love you. We love you. And
Thank
all
you.
our heart.
Same to you, Habibi. Same to you. It's
Thank
very
you so
kind of you,
much.
and
See you
all
soon.
best. And to your audience as well.
Thank you.
I'm really thankful.
Thank you.
Thank
Khalifa, you want to close the episode?
Well, Hebrews and Shebrews, we had Charles Shartouni, the one and the only, the man that started the whole thing in our podcast. And we hope to see you soon and to hug you and tell you how much we thank you for your job. Mansour Ashkar and I had the huge privilege having you. Thank you so much. Thank you for all
I
our
reciprocate.
audience.
I reciprocate. Thank you. Thank you.
Every Friday,
Good luck. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Every Friday we're here.